Hello, everyone, and welcome to Minis on the Mind, the miniatures talk show where we promote discussion and give our opinions. This week, episode 3, we talk about Games Workshop's current and past pricing policies and business practices. Now, I want to point out right away, though, this is not to start a flame war about GW and how they're overpriced and things like that. I don't feel that Games Workshop is trying to screw you. I think Games Workshop's trying to be a business, and they will do what they need to do as a business. And as we discussed today, we will see what they've done as a business to try to help themselves improve. Now, let's look back a year or two ago and see that Games Workshop was doing a whole new edition, and they were actually doing some rapid releases every month it seemed like there was a new army coming out, whether it was for fantasy or it was for 40k. Didn't really matter, but a lot of people were noticing that the prices were seeming to go up quite a bit, and I think Games Workshop suffered for it. We saw down profits, and honestly, can't blame them, because at that certain point in time, even though they were releasing popular armies and rapidly releasing things, it'd be such a discrepancy, seeing such a huge difference, such a jump, can chase away old gamers, be like, and definitely new gamers. They were making it really, really hard for new gamers to come into this. And some people might say Games Workshop was looking for that place where they were hitting the barrier, where they were hitting the line that players, hobbyists, and all of us won't pay anymore for what we're getting. And I think Games Workshop figured out where that was. And you know what? Even if they don't admit to it, they've learned. And I really feel myself that they've learned, because if you watch the current way they're releasing, the current prices, I really think they've dialed it back. Just recently with the Dark Eldar releases, I was probably one of those people who was expecting the worst out of it. I was expecting to see a $50 box of racks, and I was expecting to see a $120 bomber. And guess what? That was not the case at all. $36 for the racks. The bomber was like $80. And we know that was a year ago. It probably would have been higher. And I'm not saying that GW is overcharging us. GW does terrific work with their models. They make great models that look great, get put together well, and really the material they have holds up very well. So I'm not going to say they overcharge us, but I do think they were pricing people out of the hobby. And that's where they were coming up short with. So what we're seeing now is their new trend. They're doing a trickle release, a fast trickle release. And they've reevaluated their pricing. I think a good way to compare this to prove this would be to take the Orcs Mega Knob box and compare it to the Centurion box. The Centurions were about $70. I believe the Mega Knobs were in the 50s range. So we've seen them step back about $15 and $20. And I think GW knows that a sale at a smaller profit is still a better sale than not a sale at all. And that might be where they were having problems with. They were, as I said, I'm not trying to say gouging, because they probably weren't. They were doing what they had to do as a business. But I think they were realizing that they were getting so much fewer sales that greater sales at a smaller profit would have just made them would have affected their bottom line better, honestly. So Games Workshop is now in a very, very interesting area now. They're doing this fast-paced trickle release. They are pricing better for players. And they are doing some unique and interesting things that I really think is helping to revitalize some of the interest, especially in something like Warhammer Fantasy. The end time stuff happening right now with the release of Nagash and now the release of the Glotkin and stuff like that. That is really, really unique, and I really like it. And I'd think that they're releasing really awesome supplementary material that isn't necessary, but really interesting for players. And by doing all of this, making these cool new models and pricing these models at a good area that doesn't scare people away now, they've really started to turn themselves around. So Games Workshop, I think we've seen Games Workshop learning. Now I want to hear too if you have a different opinion on this. I want to know if you think Games Workshop, maybe you still think they're still a little bit on the high end of the pricing. Personally, when I saw the racks at $36, I said, I want 4 boxes of those. I couldn't afford it at the time, but honestly, I really wanted 4 boxes of those. Heck, if I had my way, I would have been leaving my friendly local game store with probably about $200 worth of Dark Eldar stuff around week 3. um, but that's just me. Anyways, so I guess the question I need to ask now is, where do you think Games Workshop is headed with this? Obviously, they're going to eventually run out of things that they can produce. And we're right now on the heels of a big reveal, a leak, that they're now releasing a new Tyranid model. So speculation now is that with them running out of armies to redo and bring up to 7th edition standards, the is the strategy here now to do interesting single model releases. Because I think they'd be playing with some really, really dangerous waters if they were to already start redoing armies they just finished redoing. Or maybe now we'll see a focus shift from 40k, and we'll see a little bit slower release of the 40k figurines for the last few armies that they have to do, and we'll see a shift back to fantasy. As I love fantasy, that is my game. As much as I have 40k models, I love fantasy more. And with the end times, this could be marking the beginning of another edition coming up real soon. And with that, we could see some really, really awesome refocusing on fantasy, and probably some really good reworking of a lot of the fantasy armies that are now starting to fall far behind the 40k armies. So I want to know, what do you think as far as their business practices are going for the future, and how do you think the pricing trend is going to continue? Are we going to continue seeing this slightly spiked price area that we're at now, but it seems drawn back from about a year ago? Or do you think we're going to see them try to push the envelope again? Also, what do you think they're going to do as far as when it comes to what they're producing now? Do you think there's going to be a lot more supplemental material and additional things that they're going to be producing to help expand what's already out there instead of redoing what's already out there? I know for a long time what their business model was here, we have armies, we are releasing a new edition. With that new edition, we're going to start our cycle of putting out new books, redoing older kits, and putting out a couple new units or whatever to go with the new book. So I want to hear what you think they're going to do. I want to hear what you think they could do to maybe even improve a little bit more for yourself and all the other hobby friends. Anyways, it is Warpainter Brian of Warpainting Services here signing off. And next week, episode 4, we are going to discuss some of the best tools you can have for your hobby. Take care, everyone. Love you.